I truly believe that we're watching the breakdown of society, and that these wars that you're watching pop up all over the world is going to spread to become a global third world war, or we're going to see civil wars within our countries. Like, I really believe that there's a lot of actual physical conflict coming along with the energy shortages. There's a lot of things that are hitting that tipping point that you mentioned, and I believe it could tip at any moment. Debt is stealing from your future, and that's always assuming the future is going to be better than the present. If you have my mindset, I don't believe that to be true. Stay out of debt and get out of debt. Canada, I think we're poised to have ours online in 2025. That's a central bank digital currency. So we will no longer have dollars. We will have digital dollars that are programmable, which means governments can write the rules on how you're allowed to spend that money. And you'll not be allowed to save money. See, my self-reliance sounds selfish, but what's more selfish than not being competent when you are capable of being competent, choosing not to be competent, and you're the first one with your hand out when, there's a crisis. For most of us, life has been so good, and then we're too arrogant to believe that history's not going to repeat itself again. Like, this is the most stable period in history, and to take that for granted is such a mistake. To me, 2024 seems to be a critical year. There's a sort of a convergence of all the crises in different categories of society, and to me, it's worse than 2008, the buildup.
Like, has there ever been times where you're like, man, I can't keep doing this. I got to go back to the city. Like, has there ever been a challenge that you've been faced with where that's been very difficult to overcome in adapting to this life?
Part of spending time in the wilderness with very little gear, for example, and building a business and then losing it all and then taking on such a massive debt personally. It's like, I know that I can go to zero, and now I know I can go way below zero, and it doesn't kill me. So because I know that, I'm never fearful to take risks, but I also would never give up this because I could go to zero. I know I could build a cabin with my hands and live in that thing. I know I can hunt and fish and feed myself. And I get great joy out of doing those things. And I get great joy out of being a provider. I mean, I think every man who's ever provided anything for their family is very proud of that and feels satisfied when they do that. And I don't know how many people you've heard that, have grown something and then they cook that for their family or for guests, how proud they are that they provided a portion or all of that meal. Like, it's so satisfying that I can't imagine going back to a world that is secondhand. I went to this job and did this thing, created this thing for somebody I'll never know or see, so that I can get a paycheck and go home and take care of my family. I don't like that disconnect. It doesn't relate to me. I can't function in that society, in that way of living. So I'm not tempted at all. There's no hardships. And there's been lots of hard days, but none of them have ever made me reconsider my choices.
Yeah. And I think it's all relative, as the cliche goes, but there's going to be those challenges in the city that are mostly bound up in, self-inflicted crises that, don't need to be crises. Like, oh, I gotta work real hard to get this new pair of shoes to impress these people I don't know, as opposed to, well, it's really cold outside, but I got to go out and do that thing. And, I got to get my hands dirty. And, these are real tangible things that are easy to overcome, as you say. And I think you get more and more empowered. Do you ever have any anxiety about being the guy that knows these things? Because there may come a point in time where people are looking to you for guidance. And the last time we spoke, we kind of talked a little bit about leadership and how, that's not something that you're aspiring to, but that it's a burden you might have at some point, is that people are going to be coming to you for, advice on how to live. I mean, that's kind of what's happening here is, we're taking notes, right? Like, is it concerning to you that you may at some point be tasked with being the leader of your community?
So part of what I filmed today was an admission that I'm feeling irresponsible by not taking on that leadership role. And my main channel, my Self-Reliance channel, that has like 2.3 million subscribers or whatever it is, and it's the average views are about 500,000 per video on that channel, and I average like 6 or 7 million plus views overall per month. I feel like that's fluff. I feel like that I've romanticized the off grid or the homesteading lifestyle, and people are watching to find peace, which I think is fine. I think is valuable. But I started up my second channel specifically so that I could explain to the people that are more interested what I'm doing, and maybe they can learn from that. I'm feeling right now that I might not be able to put as much content out on my main channel that's fluff, and instead focus more on my other platforms like Rumble, Patreon, and the podcast in order to be more helpful, but also controversial. I know I'm going to pay a personal price for it. And I think I'm probably going to pay a financial price for it as well. But I feel like the world has gone crazy. And if I don't lift as heavy a load as I can and share that with others, then I'm doing the world an injustice. So basically, if you have skills and knowledge and then you're not sharing that, then it's selfish. And yeah, we need people to stand up and actually speak out against what's happening and be. I've always led by example, and I always try to kind of overcompensate. That's probably one of my weaknesses. I try to, if I don't know, if a 30-minute video is good enough for YouTube, I have to put out a 45-minute video, whatever it is. I overcompensate by overperforming as much as I possibly can. I feel like that's not a bad example for men these days. And I think we need to work harder. I think we need to be better stewards of everything around us, including the land and our families. And I think we need to, share that knowledge and even the resources. I'm fully prepared to give everything up to my family or to my community if necessary. I'll go live in a sleeping bag in the woods if I had to, if it meant protecting my family, and I had to hand the infrastructure over to them. Whatever I have to do, I'm willing to do. And I think right now and in coming years, we need people to be able to do that. We need men to stand up and take responsibility.
It's interesting that you say people are more concerned with being entertained than they are educated. And I get that, same vibe on my channel where, a lot of the current events and news analysis and, making people aware of what's happening is oftentimes more well received than if we try to show people how to do something. But I know you're concerned about the potential drawbacks and how it might affect you negatively, either financially or otherwise. But I think that we're entering a period of time where people are going to be seeking that, and there will be, if there's demand for something, people are going to, it will be lucrative in some way, shape, or form, possibly even way more than, the videos that you're making on My Self-Reliance, which are amazing videos and which definitely pique people's interest. I think they're important to bring people in, just like some of how my daily update videos are bringing people interested into the realm of preparedness. But yeah, at some point, there's this onus of responsibility that, like, you're the guy, you're the one doing this now, and there's no one that you're looking up to anymore other than yourself. So, I don't think anybody is obligated to do anything, but I think eventually people will start to seek that out. And obviously it's going to be a much smaller subsection of your viewership, because let's face it, most people are lazy. But like you said, there has to be that work ethic that seeks to go above and beyond, because that's what's going to be required, not just doing the bare minimum to get by, but actually wanting to outperform. And that's really how I think we've historically been able to be successful as a species, in that we saved a little more each year, from the harvest, and we built a little bit more. We went a little bit further than our comfort zone would have permitted.
And from a selfish standpoint, I want the people around me to be strong. Like, I can share knowledge and I can share some resources, but we mentioned carrying capacity. mentioned carrying capacity before. If I'm at the limit that for my land, there's only so much I can do to provide for other people other than my family. But if I have strong people around me that are providing, first of all, that we can barter with services or goods, that's important. I want to build a strong community, or I want to have a strong community around me. So I hope everybody that's capable is going to stand up and do as much as they possibly can with the mental and physical capacities that they have. I don't want weak men coming to me for help when they're capable of doing it themselves and to be the anchor of their small community.
Yeah, and it's less of a liability too if people can take care of themselves. It's less of they're coming to be dependent on you, and possibly, if worst case Mad Max breaks out, then they're kicking in your door, right? If they have those skills to learn and they realize that the yield is much better if they commit themselves to the task than trying to get it from somebody else, and that whole teach a man to fish philosophy, I guess, comes into play.
See, my self-reliance sounds selfish, but what's more selfish than not being competent when you are capable of being competent, choosing not to be competent, and you're the first one with your hand out when, there's a crisis? My self-reliance means I'm not going to be standing at the food bank with my hand out. Like, I don't need the handout. In fact, I'll be handing out. I mean, that is the least selfish thing I could do, is to be self-reliant and not a burden.
Is there any of these, like in talking about, the potential for things to go awry? I know your channel is very forward thinking. It's very optimistic. It's very apolitical. It's not controversial. I know you talked a little bit about wanting to maybe do a bit more of a foray into those kind of topics. What sort of things do you discuss on your podcast that you think are going to be different from what you're doing right now?
Well, talking, I would say, about the foundations of self-reliance, and a lot of that starts with financial self-reliance, like being in debt. Debt is stealing from your future or borrowing from your future, and that's always assuming the future is going to be better than the present. If you have my mindset, that I don't believe that to be true. So I would say I've encouraged people and maybe help people stay out of debt and get out of debt, and that's, even from a national level, we're in a very bad position. Most nations, and Canada is one of the worst. And, to learning how to manage resources, but also just right down to what tools are needed. So what's the priority? What do you buy first when you have a little bit of extra income? What do you invest your money into? How do you protect yourself physically, but also from high taxes and things like that, like I mentioned earlier, from overpaying for things, like how to learn how to shop. Your partner, how do you choose a partner? How do you maintain relationships? My wife is foundational in what I do as well, and she's become a hub of her community because she's the cheesemaker. She's really into holistic natural medicines and processes and so on. So she's become a real hub in like helping out the female part of the community. So, so that's partnership. So nurturing partnerships and family. Well, like I said, the actual skills themselves. So instead of just demonstrating what I'm doing, why did I choose to do it this way? And what's a better way to do it? I believe that energy is going to be a real problem. So if you have a chainsaw, for example, what's the proper handsaw to have to replace that chainsaw, and learn how to use it and build up the body, because health is a big component of self-reliance as well. Build up the body to be able to use things like hand tools, or to walk long distances if necessary, or to carry heavy loads through the woods.
Do you think that there's something calling you to this lifestyle that is, let's say, like a sixth sense, like an intuition that things are going to get kind of weird in the future? Is there do you feel as though you're being pulled in this direction? Or is this, like you say, just an innate part of your personality? Because myself, I feel like I'm being like, there's this great attractor that's saying, hey, you better get this done soon, because, things are going to get interesting. And I know you don't talk about this stuff on your channel, and I'm always interested to talk to people like yourself who are Men a few words with respect to the reasons why they're doing something, yet they're showing us how they do it. Could you maybe just share a bit of your thoughts on the future and, what might be pulling you in this direction?
Well, I think, reading The Transcendentalists as a teenager and doing poorly in school because I felt like that was not preparing me for reality was probably where I was being pushed or pulled in this direction from that young of an age. The attraction to hunting and fishing and gardening as a teenager, again, I think it was innate, but I think I felt like modern society wasn't for me. And if it wasn't for me, it must not be for a whole bunch of people. Like, I don't typically address the spiritual side of it, but maybe there is a reason I'm in this position now to help others. I truly believe that we're watching the breakdown of society, and that we haven't talked war specifically, but I believe that these wars that you're watching pop up all over the world is going to spread to become a global third world war, or we're going to see civil wars within our countries. Like, I really believe that there's a lot of actual physical conflict coming along with the energy shortages. We have environmental issues to contend with, including shortages of things like fresh water, fish in the oceans, but even fish in the lakes. Like, the population in my area alone has grown, say, 3 times in my lifetime. There's only a limited number of fish in the lakes that I fish, and fishing is becoming very difficult if you want to bring it down to a level very easy to understand. Like there's a lot of things that are hitting that tipping point that you mentioned, and I believe it could tip at any moment. So, yeah, having the skills. I like skills more than anything. So if somebody's coming to me, let's say there's a breakdown tomorrow, and a young man of, say, 22 has not built up a financial nest egg, does not have physical resources in the form of tools or land or anything else, but he comes to me with skill and ability and physical health and mental health. But that is very important as well. Like, a lot of what I have now is because I've worked hard my entire life, and I'm in my 50s now. So I've accumulated some things even after going through that high debt period. But as a young man, I didn't have this. But what I did have was work ethic and as much knowledge as I could glean at that age. I read incessantly. I consumed education and knowledge. I was obsessed with it. As a young man, people looked up to me then in my early 20s. They saw me build a cabin in my early 20s. I wasn't online. There was no online. But people who knew me knew I could get things done. And wherever I had worked, any jobs that I had, I got promoted because I was competent and a hard worker. And I would say, work, don't take that for granted. Like, if you have it, then nurture it. And if you don't have it, then seek it out.
Yeah, I think it's the value of human resources too when it comes to these types of situations. Oftentimes, preppers get very isolationist, but there's definitely a value to seeing just the value of people. Obviously, you're not opening your door to everybody who comes in and is looking for something, but yeah, there's definitely an underlying movement, it seems, towards preparedness for the more broader scale crises that might arise in the future. You talked a little bit about the geopolitical aspect of things. There's definitely, it's a friend of mine, Rafi Farber, who I've had on the channel before, talks about how the underlying cause of a lot of society's ailments is what's at the root of the financial system. Like, he's a finance guy. Depending on who I interview on the channel, depending on which background they come from, they all think that their thing is what all the problems stem from. But his is interesting because he says that the root of everything that we're seeing, the conflict, the natural resource depletion and scarcity, and all of these things, and civil unrest, is related to the corruption that arose at the level of the financial system. So, the fractional reserve banking and the incessant printing of money, and, just the debt-based economy that continuously seeks to grow the economy so that can service more and more debt. Like it's inherently flawed. Are you a person who values other methods of finance management, like precious metals? Is that something that you've looked into at all, or are you more just at the level of tangible resources and commodities?
If I was a young man that wanted to follow this path and was starting from zero, I would get two jobs, probably in the construction industry where you can almost name your price depending on the geography. And I would move to the place that allows you to do that because there's a scarcity of skilled, hardworking men. That would allow you to pay off your debt if you've accumulated debt. With the excess money, I would start buying gold and silver and Bitcoin. And if you are turned off by the $60,000 price of $50,000 price of Bitcoin, you're not trying to buy a Bitcoin. You're not trying to, just like you're not trying to earn $1,000 bill. You're buying things in increments. So just because something looks high, it doesn't mean it's not still valuable on a smaller scale. So in other words, buy $100 worth of Bitcoin every week and start accumulating that. Buy one gold coin or a silver coin instead of an ounce of gold, but do it. Like seriously do it, and just consider that, especially the precious metals. You're not investing, you're preserving, because cash with today's inflation rates, that the real inflation, not what's publicized, your dollar is getting eroded probably at 10% plus. And I think that's going to be on and off, but continuing. I think it's here to stay until we get so bad that we're in a deflationary period, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think there's just going to be a shortage of goods with all the global unrest and lack of work ethic. Like Canada is one of the least productive people on the planet. Like our GDP per person is horrible. Our output is horrible. And I was an employee, we had 90 something employees at one point. And, I don't like, talking down to the working class, because I am working class. But, when you're looking for shorter and shorter hours every week and longer breaks and more money,
Yeah.
that's not productive.
Yeah.
Great that you're getting that, but that's not good for the economy, and it's really not good for you. You're not learning work ethic. You're not increasing your value. You're actually just looking for more handouts rather than making yourself more valuable and therefore earn money because you're more valuable. Yeah, do all those things. I mean, put some money into gold and silver where it's not going to be eroded. It's likely to at least keep pace with inflation. So whatever you put in there, you're going to still have 30 or 40 years from now. Bitcoin, I think, is probably it's one of the futures of finance or cryptos, but I especially like Bitcoin. Dollars are just getting eroded so fast. I keep just enough money in the bank. And banks are not stable either. You could lose it all, but I keep just enough in there to transact with. Anything else goes into land because because of my age and because I've been working hard and because I've had success on YouTube, not because of the algorithm, but because of merit, because I've been working hard and trying to provide value to the market. I've been paid well, so I buy land, and I try to buy things that I know people will need because I need them. Like I bought a tractor last week. I picked it up today, actually, a new stove for boiling maple syrup, because that maple syrup is offsetting that I make with that wood stove is going to offset the cost of buying sugar in the future. So everything is an investment, whether it's a piece of equipment or land or water, whatever it is, it's all an investment. So buy things that don't degrade. So if you're buying a tool, for example, buy something that's going to last, and that's going to be more valuable in the future, whether we're forced to use it and it's valuable for that reason, or it's got resale value, or it's got value to you because you can continue to use it.
No, I was just going to say that's great advice, because, even like with a tractor or something, a lot of people will think, well, technological deflation and, how long is the thing going to last? But we're entering a period now where it seems like every other year, like these tools that you would need are more expensive, like a Bobcat or, something like that. Like, I think these are great ways to preserve wealth for a person who doesn't want to gamble in the stock market. You said a lot of interesting things there with respect to the general work ethic of the population nowadays. And a lot of that has been nurtured by just all the amenities of civilization that have these creature comforts have made us very soft. Surprisingly, you mentioned Bitcoin, which I think will probably catch some of our viewers off guard. I think any decentralized finance is probably something to consider, but I think people would be surprised to know that, because that's a contrast of worlds in a way. Because you're talking about like being out in the boonies, but Bitcoin is something which is really dependent on the grid, right? So, how do you? What maybe you could share a bit more thoughts on why you think decentralized finance in general is something people should consider.
Part of my career was in solar, and it was distributed solar power, which was installations of solar energy on rooftops. And I liked that concept, the idea of generating your electricity at the source where you're using it makes sense to me. So whenever you have a complex system like our electrical distribution grid, when we had this in the past, we had the blackout, I think it was the one from the ice storm that actually put out like Eastern Canada and the northeastern US, one failure point. So I like decentralized things for that reason. I don't really believe that even in a cyber attack that the grid is gone for good. I think it's, here to stay at some level and might have some outages here and there. So that's why I say I don't put anything in one form of financial instrument, including Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin. But I think that decentralization, I think we're headed globally on many fronts to deglobalization to begin with. But to have a currency that's not contingent on or doesn't rely on the strength or the ethics of a government, I think is a great thing. And I think despite the fact that we're going to get hammered by different jurisdictions to shut it down and make it somewhat illegal, I think there's going to be always a way to use a decentralized financial instrument like Bitcoin. And again, how's the fiat currency in your pocket, or not even in your pocket, on your credit card or your debit card? How is that any more real than Bitcoin? The Bitcoin has a limited amount, right? We're going to CBDCs, by the way. Like, I don't know how many people realize that. Canada, I think we're poised to have ours online in 2025. That's a central bank digital currency. So we will no longer have dollars, including fiat currency, that is autonomous. We will have digital dollars that are programmable, which means governments, anyone in control, can write the rules on how you're allowed to spend that money, and you'll not be allowed to save money. So when this credit crisis actually bursts, or the bubble bursts, and all the countries like Canada are virtually bankrupt, they're going to somehow sidestep their debt and come out with this central bank digital currency and force everybody to be on it. And then it's programmable. And if we're all broke, or we're working as collectivists, and we're supposed to put our money into the system so that the powerful government can distribute that equitably, then do you think they're going to let you go and buy an off-grid property, or to not participate in the economy, not be generating as many tax dollars as your neighbor? Like, I would be making moves as quickly as possible, and I'd be trying to find ways to finance it without being part of this new system that's coming on board, or it's replacing the broken one that exists now. And why would the new one not be broken as well?
Yeah, it's really just another layer on top of the pyramid that is built on, corruption and this dollar that's being debased. So I think what you're saying, doing what you have to do now is such important advice. I think that's even just in having this conversation with you, it's reconfirmed for me that I need to start making some moves in that respect, because procrastinating is not a luxury that we're going to have for much longer. And I think that seizing on the opportunities to get that piece of land, or I really do think that we're in a period now where people need to consider, and this is not financial advice, obviously, but for myself personally, it's like, how can I turn these ones and zeros into something tangible that I can use or somebody can use down the road? Like, it feels that's where we're at. And I know that facts aren't feelings, but I have this intuition that something is coming here in 2024. And, that could just be because I'm so consumed by the news. But I do feel as though the time is running out for at least for it to be as accessible as it is right now.
Again, I recommend always reading and listening to as many things as possible. I'd go back and read Atlas Shrugged, and then look at what the elite are doing right now with their money. I think it was yesterday. I don't know where I saw this, but Mark Zuckerberg building a $270 million bunker. Rich Dad Poor Dad just talked on a podcast last week about him and his cronies having a massive property in South Carolina that's completely self-sufficient. The elite have been preparing for this type of crisis or consolidation of crisis for quite a while now. And they're in the know. Like, these are people that have inside information. So if they're doing it, when are we going to find out that we need to act? So I always say, well, it's the cliche about the best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago. Next best time is today. You gotta take a step every single day down this path, and it takes longer than you think. So you want to be somewhere along that path when shit hits the fan. Like, you don't want to be starting out or not even prepared to start out, not even know which direction to head in. Like, you need to get your bearings now and I don't let a day go by. Said this before, but I'm up at 4:30 every morning editing and consuming content to figure out where the world's headed and where we're at. And I don't, if I go to bed and I don't go to bed without taking a step down that path.
No, I was just going to say your comments about, the wealthy preparing, and a lot of people, it seems, are waiting for that social proof from like a certain critical mass of people to say, okay, or NBC or ABC to say it's time to take this seriously. Prepping is no longer stigmatized. But when you really look, like you're saying, at the people with the most to lose, they are hedging their bets in these kind of ways for a reason. Because if something were to happen with the financial system, they know that what they have is what they have. Like, possession is going to be 9/10 of the law. And so if they're making these moves, I mean, and these are the people who really, run society. I mean, who are you going to take advice from? Are you going to look at what they're doing and follow in their footsteps? Or are you going to follow in the guy who's watching the news and stuffing his face with junk food saying, oh, that's just a bunch of crazy talk. It's become abundantly clear, all these people, and I could list, hundreds more. And the more people that I meet, and as I kind of evolve as a channel, and the more affluent people I meet, I realize it's getting to the point where I'm shocked that everything I've been talking about is actually real, because there's times where I have these moments of self-doubt where I'm like, okay, is this all in my head? But then I realize, holy shit, like, this guy, this centimillionaire is actually, his sources are guiding him in this direction. And it's not in the realm of fantasy theory anymore. It really is high risk and a plausible and a probable risk, in certain cases. So, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of that because...
well, yeah, no, I mean, the problem is we're really tied to baselines. And, for most of us, life has been so good and we don't pay attention to history. Like, and then we're too arrogant to believe that history is not going to repeat itself again. Like, this is the most stable period in history and the most affluent period in history. And to take that for granted is such a mistake. And you said something, you said, hedge your bet. They're hedging their bets. I think it's an important takeaway is that what's the worst that could happen if you're prepared and living the life that I'm choosing, for example. The worst case is, and best case is that nothing happens. And I've lived an awesome life anyway. I've loved every minute of what I'm doing. Like, this is not a sacrifice. And I think preppers have been given that bad, have been stigmatized because it looks like that's it. They're just hunkering down and not living life and spending all their money on ammunition and food and water. It's, if you're living at least this is my opinion, the way I'm living is so meaningful and so satisfying. I don't care. I hope nothing happens. Obviously, I hope nothing happens, but I'm kind of not too concerned one way or the other.
It's in the journey, not the destination, as they say. I mean, choose your poison, right? In this society, you could spend a lifetime playing video games, watching sports, going out to clubs, chasing women. Pick your poison. Or you could, maybe become, and I would say that you never want to do something to the point where it's detrimental or it becomes an addiction. But what is the worst that can happen in terms of, leading this lifestyle, which is fulfilling still on many levels? Because, I believe the best things in life are free, regardless of where you do them. It's going to be family, friends, and you can do that really anywhere. So if this is going to bring people peace of mind, and we have to ask ourselves, well, why is there a stigma? Why is this thing that might actually, protect us in the future stigmatized? Is that a part of the whole plan, right?
Yeah, clearly we know the answer to that, but most people aren't ready to hear it. And I think we can safely, drop the theory from a conspiracy theory. I think we've proven most of the theories as actually true. So I question everything now that I've been told, and I don't suggest going down too many rabbit holes too deeply, at least. But I think you should probably take everything you hear on mainstream media with a grain of salt, and some of the people that you thought were crazy, maybe just have another listen.
Yeah. Well, and the people who are, perceived as craziest in the best of times, those are going to be the people that everybody is gravitating towards in the worst of times. So, which is not to say that there's not a line that can potentially get crossed with some of this stuff, and maybe some people go a little too deep into those rabbit holes. But at this point in time, yeah, I mean, there is no need to justify a life of preparedness, I don't think, or a self-reliant lifestyle. And do you have any, because it's a big leap to do what you're doing, right? Like it's a huge leap to go from the bug out bag to my self-reliance. I mean, and maybe, I guess you kind of started off at the level of my self-reliance, but is there any other advice you can give to people with respect to making that transition to an actual self-sufficient, regenerative, horticultural-based system where you can literally, provide for yourself year after year? Is there any other advice you can give to people?
Well, I think first of all, better decide whether you're serious about it. Mm-hmm. Like, make sure that it's actually what you want, and if it is, then you'll pursue it with all that you've got, and that's what's necessary. You don't take a day off from, learning and acting and and physical fitness and health fitness, eating properly. Like, it's all connected. There's no just self-reliant pill. There's not a, learn to shoot a gun or learn to hunt and you're self-sufficient or self-reliant. Like, it's everything. Like, I'm not great at anything, but I'm pretty good at a lot of things, and the things that are necessary because I've focused on those things. And I've spent a lifetime building the skills. You can build skill, well, at least knowledge, very quickly these days with the internet and with mentors that are willing to help. And I'll do a better job of this, like I said, on my own YouTube channels about teaching people, but the resources are there. It's the effort that's usually lacking, and it's also the fear. I think what holds most people back and it holds people back from quitting their job and starting a business. That's where I started becoming more self-reliant financially, is when I decided not to be an employee any longer and become self-directed, self-employed, and then a business owner. That's the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I would suggest reading that book. I read that 25 years ago or whenever it came out. And I fully believe that financial education is necessary. So I would start with those kind of resources, learn as much as you can, work hard. Like I said, pay your debt up. You can't be in debt and get into this lifestyle. It's virtually impossible. First of all, you're too exposed to the system and into control. If they tell you, for example, you need to get the shot in order to keep your job, you get the shot. Well, you don't want to put yourself in that position where they can make you do whatever they want to do because you're financially dependent on them. But the other thing is relationships. Like if you think your wife is not willing to do it, I'm not going to say maybe you need another wife, but I think maybe you need to choose a partner and partners in life that at least support your vision or support your direction and hopefully share in it, but also don't assume that they're not willing to take that risk with you. And I know kids, for example, because I know my kids were, what were they, 9 and 10, I think, when we lost our, yeah, 10 and 11 when we lost our business. And we started looking for rental houses in remote places. We were going to have to move to a completely different area so I could take a job so I could pay my bills. And they were excited about it. And here we were trying to hold on to the house that we had raised them in so hard that I was doing things that, were very stressful in order to retain that. And they were up for the adventure. Like, so don't assume that your family's not willing to do it with you. And and there's always compromises that you need to make. I'm sitting in a compromise right now with my wife. Like we communicate, which is so important, and we come up with a plan that works for both of us, and then we pursue that relentlessly. So don't let fear and don't let people hold you back from this.
I think I like what you said too about it being a lifestyle that you just have to relinquish control to in a way, and like you say, work really hard, but also just understand that maybe there's no, there's no real destination with this. Like it's going to be something that you have to just enjoy for the sake of it itself and enjoy that adventure. And there's a lot of good motivational gems in what you just said. Is there anything you miss about the city? Is there anything that you think of to yourself, oh, I wish I would have did that some more? Is there any regrets?
Right now, we are going on a road trip to see some parts of the world that we've never seen. And to be honest, we're nervous about it, being trapped in the case of an event or something like before where the borders were closed. So, but it's something we feel like we don't have much more time to see the places that we've never seen that we want to see. So I would say that, but also, if it didn't happen, if I didn't get to see those places, I also, my life wouldn't be empty. Yeah. So it's a want more than a need. There's nothing I need from the city, and I'm completely fine with losing most of the modern conveniences I have now. In fact, I do struggle. Of course, that is it's not just Bitcoin, but how do you live or be a person who wants to live the lifestyle I'm living and still be online? Like, I'm a content creator, yet, I want to just be in the woods with, no tools, no modern gear. So that's already a contradiction that I have to deal with. So I would say probably I would rather not have to do this, I guess. Like, part of me doesn't want to be exposed, but also to expose myself to everything online and just be part of that electronic world. I'd like to distance myself. So I would say there's more things I would like to give up of modernity than I miss.
And you said that you don't have internet access out there in the cabin, like where you shoot the videos. Not right now, obviously you do, but so that digital detox component, what can you say about that in terms of, do you think that's important? Because I know that there's very few times where I've been outside of cell phone range. I mean, most people are constantly in cell phone range now. We don't even think about it, right? But there's very few cases now where you can go far enough out. Maybe you're in the mountains somewhere, but in most cases, good luck getting out of range. How important do you think that digital detox is for just people's sanity? And is that almost, I foresee it becoming a fad in the future where people just shut their phones off for a few days and kind of come back to reality.
Well, you can see on the bookshelf in the cabin that I'm loading up on books. So I mean, it's hard to believe how much you slow down when you, and how much you keep reaching for your phone when when it's near you.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very difficult to. But like I'm just old enough. I didn't get a phone till I was 30. Cell phones weren't really a thing till I was 29 or 30. So I've lived both ways, and I mean, I would love to go back to those days. So I think if there must be something to it that, well, I don't know. I'm often at a cell phone range, not just at the cabin, but also on all my canoe trips and fishing trips. So I guess I'm more used to that. So it's the people around you that can't get a hold of you seem to be more anxious about it than the person that's actually there.
Yeah.
But I think of course, I think it's important. I think people would be surprised. Maybe that's why I'm so productive. Like I'm not one just to consume media, other than to educate myself. Like, so I get a lot done because I'm up. I sleep my 7 hours, but other than that, my mind's in productivity mode, and and in a good way, because what I'm doing is like working outside, milling lumber, or hunting for my game or whatever. All of that is de-stressing to me. So even if I go online in the morning, or I'm editing a video or something, the majority of my day was still spent in nature and off electronics.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's maybe the best way I could look at it from my perspective, because I'm an online creator. I do have a camera in my hand a lot of times, so I'm not really that often completely separated from it. But I think just in my mind, I'm in that place, and I am there. And I find then with a camera, a lot of times I may pay more attention to nature because I see the little things that maybe the audience I want to share it with, right? So I'm looking for that beauty maybe more, instead of just absorbing it. I'm actually seeking it out, and just not I don't know how many people are listening to this, wanting to have an online career or a YouTube channel or something, but I've made it clear that I work extremely hard at this. But I also want to make it clear that I don't have to think about I don't stress over what's my video going to be about this week, because I've chosen to live an interesting life or an alternative life. The capturing it's the harder part, coming up with ideas. It's like, okay, I should turn a camera on this, so it's going to take 3 times as long to put this roof on this thing, because I have to keep going down and turning the camera on or off.
Yeah, people don't see that.
Yeah.
People just think that the camera fairies, hold the camera, but it's a lot of work.
I'm filming and editing, and that's a lot of time. But again, I'm in nature, so I'm fully immersed in that thing. But again, I don't have to come up with an idea, because I'm living the life. So I would suggest, if you want to have a YouTube channel, then make it about your life. And if your life's not interesting enough to be a successful YouTube channel, then how about you make your life more interesting?
I think that's great advice. Great advice. And maybe that's a great place to conclude this interview. I just want to say thanks for coming out. It's been great to hear your insights. And where can people best reach you? Obviously, we know the My Self-Reliance channel and the Shawn James channel. Is there any other endeavors that you have planned for the future?
I think for now, I mean, the typical platforms. I am on Patreon, and I do put up content more often there. I've started my own podcast, so I'm talking to guests like yourself. We talked last week, and you can go to my channel to listen to that. It's a little bit different, for different perspective.
That's on the Shawn James channel?
That'll be on the Shawn James channel and on all the podcast platforms.
Yeah.
Rumble, I'm keeping my options open. I don't know when YouTube's going to say enough with this guy.
I think you're a ways off from that. You're pretty well within the Overton window. What about the Patreon stuff? Is it different stuff than what's on YouTube?
It's more raw, and for a video on My Self-Reliance on the YouTube channel is about 45 minutes typically. I'll film at least that per day, and then I'll condense it down to that, so the Patreon audience sees the entire say 45 minutes to an hour every single day unedited. So there's a lot of things in there that they're seeing that don't make it to the channel, especially because the channel, like I said, is more peaceful. So there's a lot more talking and banging around and raw stuff on the Patreon channel.
Cool. All right, guys, go and check that out. And just be sure to, if you have any questions, go and light up his inbox and his comment section there on YouTube. Thanks for coming out, man. It's been an honor to have you on the channel, and I look forward to doing it again. And maybe someday I'll make my way out that way, but I'll have to, you can blindfold me and, put me in the back of a van or whatever, and we'll make something work. All right.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.